This is the Jide Remix Ultra Tablet, an ARM-powered laptop tablet hybrid that runs Remix OS. It has unique features and did so many things right, but it was also very flawed. And that's how it became a footnote in tech history. Speaking of tech, you're watching DS Tech Media. I'm your host, Jay, and I love everything technology, but especially Linux and open source. And you like those things as well, please like, share, and if you're a real G, hit subscribe. Back to the Remix Ultra Tablet, made by Jide Technology, a Chinese company founded by 3 former Google employees. Jide's first product was Remix OS itself, built on top of Android, designed for multitasking on PCs, laptops, and tablets. Meaning you have a real taskbar with a start menu and even a system tray. The notification center slides out from the right, and you have windows with minimize, maximize, and close. At the time, vanilla Android still lacked multitasking, so Remix was kind of a good idea. And if you've used a decent Android phone, you probably know it's fast, reliable, and has good performance. How often do smartphones experience slowdowns? How often do they crash? And you may not realize it, but your Android can already work with just about any device that you have, including a mouse and keyboard. It can even work with your audio interfaces, external drives, and displays. And that's something that at the time iOS couldn't even dream of doing. That could have changed, I'm honestly not sure. In early 2015, Jide partnered with Cube to make the Cube i7 Remix Edition, powered by an Intel Atom quad-core. It still had a Windows logo, and this early version of Remix even looked a little bit like Windows 8. That same year, Jide successfully crowdfunded the first run of Remix Ultra tablets through a $210,000 Kickstarter campaign, and followed it up with the $1.6 million campaign for the Remix Mini, a Raspberry Pi-like $70 desktop powered by quad-core Cortex A53s and ARM's native Mali 400 GPU. Both products eventually made it into actual production and were sold through Jide, which is how mine was purchased. In June of 2015, Remix 1.5 is released with a number of visual changes based on Android 5.0 Lollipop. In January of 2016, the Ultra Tablet and Mini were upgraded to Remix 2.0, accompanied by an x86 beta release for AMD and Intel computers, along with Remix Player and ARM emulator for Windows, which benefits from the larger catalog of apps since Android is native to ARM. The Google Pixel C launched with Android 6 and got split-screen multitasking later on with Android 7. But Samsung has had their own split-screen implementation since the Galaxy Note 2 back in 2012. Google finally added official multi-window support in 2017 with Android 8. Shown here is the AOSP release of Android 8 with the native taskbar and multi-window management. AOSP, the open source Android with none of Google's proprietary code. Because Android is built with the Linux kernel, which is GPL2 licensed, prohibits distributing the Linux kernel alongside non-open source software. In early 2016, Jide launched a third Kickstarter, raising over $500,000 for the Remix IO, a 4K Android PC for gaming and entertainment on televisions.
Our gaming toolkit app that will allow players to keymap Android games for keyboard and mouse, as well as game controllers. Android games now unleashed for big screens.
In November of 2016, Remix 3.0 is released as an over-the-air update, which included the Remix IO's gaming toolkit. In July of 2017, Jide announced they would no longer be producing consumer products or supporting Remix, and refunded the Remix IO Kickstarter. The Jide website was taken down and now can only be found as an archive on Wayback. However, I discovered Jide's Chinese-only website that doesn't work with Google Translate and doesn't allow you to copy any of the text. It appears that in China, Jide is still launching consumer electronics. So the entire reason that I have this is because the woman that I was dating at the time wanted me to have a tablet for reasons that I don't really understand. And the only tablet I was really interested in was the Google Pixel C, because it was kind of like an iPad Pro of Android tablets, until I discovered this. And the Pixel C was quite expensive. It was $500 for the 32 gig and $600 for the 64, and then another $150 for the magnetic keyboard. And the Jide 64 gig was on sale for just under $400, magnetic keyboard included. It's also an 11.6 inch display versus the Pixel C's 10.2 inch display, although the Pixel C's 4K and this is only 1080p. Also, the Pixel C was 64-bit and this is only a 32-bit. However, both featured NVIDIA chipsets. The Pixel C had the Mac Daddy of ARM chipsets, which is the NVIDIA Tegra X1 processor. And the Jide Ultra has the Tegra 4 T40S, sporting 4 32-bit Cortex A15 cores and another invisible A15 core dedicated just to power saving and background tasks. Also featuring a GeForce ULP or ultra low power GPU with 72 total cores, however they are not unified CUDA cores. On the other hand, the Pixel C's Tegra X1 was released in 2015 with 8 ARM cores, but its Maxwell architecture GPU has 256 CUDA cores, and the Tegra X1 was also the basis of the Nintendo Switch and NVIDIA's Jetson Nano single-board computer. The Tegra X1 also gets 3 gigs of LPDDR3 and 1 gig dedicated to VRAM, whereas the T40S only has 2 gigs of the cheaper DDR3L used for everything. When my Remix arrived, the first thing I noticed was the packaging. The box itself is unique. It clearly takes inspiration from Apple or Google. It's got angular cuts that only fit together one way. I still have everything that came with it except for the micro USB adapter that I've misplaced. The keyboard is finished in cloth that's somewhere between velvet and leather. It looked and felt great when it was new, but it gets dirty easily and it really shows wear. The layout of the keys is kind of unique. The top row includes a back button and then function keys for volume, brightness, settings, locking the touchpad, search, open menu, print screen, home, end, and page up, page down. The touchpad supports multi-touch gestures, and the display touchscreen supports 10 contact points. The front and back camera are 5 megapixels. Both are pretty terrible. You've got left and right stereo speakers. They project off to the sides, but they're not terrible. And you also have a standard headphone jack for line out and headphones. We've got the micro USB port for connectivity, but charging is done via a magnetic power connector, kind of like Apple's MagSafe. The kickstand has 2 positions, and hidden behind it is the micro SD card port. And please excuse its condition, it's had some hard use. This was the worst I've ever messed up a screen protector in my life. So ideally I'd be able to use my Ultra tablet to demonstrate everything here, but the truth is the keyboard doesn't work, the screen's cracked, and I haven't used it in at least half a decade. But I do have Remix OS running in a VM on Linux, so that's how I got all my footage. Earlier releases came loaded with Chrome, the Play Store, Gmail, Google Docs, and YouTube. But later Google decertified Remix because of issues in compatibility, and so Remix 3 came without Google Play services. So as a workaround, Jide made it easy to install them yourself. You also got a few apps like Quick Pick for photos and videos, a calculator, Remix Central, and a Jide App Store that do nothing now since Jide's gone. There's also a download manager, network settings and system update apps. Play Activator is the helper for getting Play Store and Google services going. Chrome Switcher simply lets you choose if Chrome requests mobile or desktop versions of websites. Also with Remix 3 we got the gaming toolkit. There was a custom settings app that looked like this, but for Remix 3 it was replaced by the more stock Android settings with some special sections just for Remix. Arguably the best app was the Remix File Manager, since Android didn't have an official one until December 2017. The Remix File Manager has full mouse and keyboard support, including drag and drop and right-click menus. Shortcuts and keys work like you'd expect. Control, X, C, and V cut, copy, and paste. You can even right-click apps in the taskbar and close them. Alt-Tab cycles through your open apps, and the Super key opens the app drawer. Over on the bottom right, you've got the tray area for date and time, battery, and the Wi-Fi strength. It even expands to show the brightness, sound, Bluetooth, and the memory manager, which lets you one-click to free up memory. Clicking the hamburger menu opens the notification panel, and from there you can toggle notifications, location, auto hiding of the taskbar, screenshot, and open settings. The screenshot tool lets you select the area you want to capture and has a save or share option. Most apps can actually be switched between full screen and windowed mode with a toggle that's on the top left, and there's a back button here as well. And you may ask, if Android already works with a mouse and keyboard, what's the big deal? Well, you're not gonna carry around your Galaxy Tab and a mouse and a keyboard. The Ultra tablet is all of that in the size of a composition book, and battery life was also good. I used it for web design, which I never even thought of doing with Android. I tried carrying the Remix instead of my laptop, and it was interesting working with Android, running into roadblocks, and then finding Android solutions. I had a local LAMP stack with a light HTTP web server, SQL database, and PHP and JavaScript, all in a single Android app. I used AWD, or Android Web Developer. I had a Linux shell through Termux, which has a surprising number of packages available. I also had a SFTP client for pushing and pulling files from my Linux hosts, and SSH gives you access to your full Linux environment. If you're someone who works entirely in the shell with Vim or Emacs, you're all set. But for me, there were always drawbacks. So I rely heavily on Inkscape and GIMP, and there's an Android app that combines both, but it's not optimal on a small 1080p display, and it's just not the same. Android has a few decent SVG graphics apps, but if it's not your workflow, it's half measure. But for people who work heavily with Google Docs or even Microsoft's Android apps, the Remix Ultra would make you more productive than working with your thumbs. Having a full web browser can even be a game changer. Watching or listening to YouTube videos in the background while also working in another app wouldn't have been possible on other Android tablets at the time. But as I mentioned in the start, there's also flaws. My first problem with the Ultra tablet was the screen brightness. Most Android devices use your camera to determine how bright the screen should be automatically, and my Remix would suddenly dim way too low, but eventually this was fixed with an update. Some apps would crash or have display issues, probably because they weren't designed for a window manager. Some could be fixed simply by switching to the full screen phone mode. Performance on the Ultra tablet wasn't always consistent. 2 gigs of RAM was decent in 2015, but here I'm at 80% usage with only Firefox running. Probably why Jide included the memory tool in the taskbar if I had to guess. And since it's a VM, I doubled it to 4 gigs and found the performance was much smoother, especially if doing something while apps are being installed in the background. Also, Firefox doesn't work in windowed mode. I checked the window mode app list and Firefox is missing entirely. But these flaws aren't necessarily why Jide failed though. In the mid 2010s, PC sales were in the toilet and touchscreen devices appeared to be the future, which was reflected by the user interfaces for Windows 8 and Ubuntu, which were drastically redesigned around touchscreens. We had the Microsoft Surface, the iPad Pro, and even the MacBook Pro got the touch bar. But in the end, touch devices failed to replace PCs and laptops for work and productivity. It's also possible that Google blacklisting Remix may have been the real reason Jide exited the market. In my Remix VM, Google Docs isn't even in the Play Store, and I had to use Firefox to access Google Drive because the app wouldn't install, and the YouTube app is too outdated to work, so I had to rely on the browser to watch YouTube videos as well. And so that is the history of Jide and Remix OS. And you can download Remix today, but as I mentioned, you're sort of limited in what you can do with it. Quick question. Did you know about Remix before this video, or is this the first time you're hearing about it? Let me know in the comments down below. The Ultra tablet is kind of a mixed bag. I mean, I really liked having it, but it was never quite good enough at the same time. The build quality seemed great at first, but as you've seen, mine is in rough condition, so honestly, I should probably have one of those tough books that the cops use because I'm pretty hard on laptops. I think the Google decertification was the real nail in the coffin for Remix, and in the end, the demand for touch devices was kind of a bubble. But yeah, there you have it. This video was kind of different. It was a mashup of hardware, history, and the OS itself. I can check Remix off my list of operating systems that I've wanted to cover. I've been meaning to do this video for a while because I do think it's an interesting part of tech and Android history. For other operating systems, I have a playlist you can check out. I'll link it. Though it's mostly Linux distros, there's some other stuff in there. Haiku's in there, and I'm working on some new stuff that's not Linux at all. So subscribe for more. And for DS Tech Media, I'm Jay saying, watch, you'll learn something. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.